Kinder, vorsichtig, wenn ihr euch Vorbilder aussucht. Okay? Children, please be careful when you choose your role models. Stay with me. I will explain. Ich begrüße Sie bei Hanover Global Network. Herzlich willkommen. So, a lot of the times when we're looking for a spouse, our parents will tell us you should be extremely cautious. Okay? Because they understand. They've been there before. Also, when you're looking for friends, your parents will tell you be careful who you hang out with. Well, also, as important is when you're looking for role models, people who you believe that you can look at them and want to incorporate some of what they do in your life. It is critical, as critical, to be careful who you choose as role models, especially in the annals of politics. It is already a treacherous, devious, and cunning game. But you've got to understand that the public presentation of who they are and what they do behind the scenes is entirely different. A lot of the times, politicians are like actors on a stage. So let's make this clear. Youthfulness and being young is not a prerequisite for politics, because there are young politicians who may be good at the job. There are old politicians who may be good at the job. There are middle-aged politicians that may be good at the job. But there are also very young politicians who are horrible at the job. And there are middle-aged politicians who are not too good at the job. And of course, there are older politicians who may also not be very good at the job. So youth is not a prerequisite for politics. But you want to know what is actually a prerequisite, or should be a prerequisite, or is the most important prerequisite? I'll tell you. Competence. Remember that. Competence at what you do. If you are to represent the interests of your nation, and you can do a lot of damage if you don't, you need to be competent. You need to understand, at minimum, regional and international geopolitics. You can't come into this game and just settle for only understanding a little coconut local politics. No, not at all. So I guess the gentleman was right when he said, I should have read some more. And he was only half right when he said he should have read some more. Because there are some things that you can't learn in a book, especially in the annals of politics, unless you have some excellent intuition, okay? And you already have a knack for the whole subject. You see, but I paid attention. The World Civilization 101, World Civilization 102. Because as King Solomon has said, nothing really changes under the sun. And I also paid attention in high school. I had one of the best social studies teacher, Mr. Vishnu Narayan. Okay? That gentleman made social studies very interesting at the best school in Grenada, HHSS. So we paid attention. And back then, when teachers taught you stuff, they also made sure you kind of like attached it to current events and world affairs. And then we grew up listening to BBC. You understand? So we paid attention. We listened to the radio and we understand what was happening in world affairs. But I don't know. Guess you guys too busy on the internet looking at garbage. I don't know, the kids probably playing Roblox. Or they're looking at African movies. Well, I can imagine the influx of African movies now, especially where your PM has an affinity for Africa. So one of the things that was touted about this current administration is that they were young and bright, as if that youthfulness would have automatically made them good at the job of politics. One of the hallmarks of being brilliant is the ability to predict with a certain level of certainty certain outcomes. To talk about outcomes after they have already happened is not brilliant at all. So the thing about it is that when you say you're bright or when you say you're good at something, nature sort of mimics you, and it will provide situations or opportunities to see how bright you are. Well, the whole dilemma, okay, with the US-Venezuela spat and Grenada's position in all of this was a keen opportunity to prove how young and bright these politicians are. Well, you and I know the disaster that descended on them as a result of the handling of that situation. So you and I can comfortably say right now that they're not young and bright. They may be young, and I don't even think that they're young because they always told this young thing. But no credit to them, but the PRG had so many young fellas running the show. So when you reach 45 and you're close to 50 and them kind of thing, or your early 40s, you can't be talking about young, especially when it comes to Grenadian politics, because they have always been and always will be influential youths in the politics of Grenada. And in the 70s and early 80s was riddled with young men and women who took up the mantle of responsibility to try to propel their country forward. And of course, there were some petty bourgeois who hijacked the process, and that is why it ended the way it ended. But that's a whole different story. So you see now, you have, I think it's tonight, they're supposed to be having some sort of big discussion. That is supposed to be having some sort of panel discussion on the 52nd independence. And they're there to discuss how Grenada would protect its sovereignty and security. That's a big discussion tonight. So Dr. This and Dr. That, no, are masterful thinkers on the issue. But interestingly enough, Dr. This and Dr. That wasn't able to advise the government prior to them making major geopolitical decisions. But then after consequences descended on the government and the people of Grenada, Dr. This and Dr. That and all the socialist, Marxist, radical leftists and sympathizers are now, tonight, I believe, in Tier Marisho Community College, are discussing how we're going to protect our sovereignty and security. Well, I don't understand. If Dr. This and Dr. That was so brilliant, you would have thought that they would have been able to advise their comrades in government beforehand. I mean, one of them is supposed to be what? A political scientist? You see, that's the problem with the arts and humanities in general, right? In these subjects, you can do whatever you want to do, okay? You can come with all sort of theory. You can screw up nations, but you're never held responsible. And I think it was Thomas Sowell that said that, okay? You can do all of this crap, come up with all sort of theories. I mean, look what Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels did, right? They created a theory that people adopted all over the world, and there was so much death and destruction as a result of trying to implement that theory. There's so much evil was done in the name of socialism and Marxism. But yet still, all these intellectuals are never held responsible for what they have done. And we see it happening today. There's intellectuals all over the world. Economists, political scientists, sociologists, criminologists, psychologists, psychiatrists, okay? But they are never held for the damage that they do to society and to individuals and collectively that they do to people. Never held responsible. You see, that is the difference now with the science. That is the difference. Because let's say you're an architect or an engineer or something like that. If you build a bridge and the bridge fails, that's it. Your career is over. Nobody will let that down. Or if you build a building, if you're a structural engineer and you're doing building structural, you build a building and something happens to that building, you're done. Nobody will trust you again. Okay? If you're a doctor and you start prescribing wrong medication, okay, or you're making people unwell when you're supposed to be making them well, people are going to hold you responsible. If you're a chemical engineer or mechanical engineer, or you make a machine or something and it breaks down and it doesn't work, guess what? People are going to hold you accountable. So that is the difference with the sciences. That people hold you accountable when you make mistakes. And your mistakes are so immediately apparent. It's like in engineering. If a guy comes into a workplace, after the first week, you're going to know, hey, you know what? Forget it. This guy's got to go. But in the arts and humanities, forget about it. Anything flies. You can be a political scientist that didn't advise your government on how to proceed in major geopolitical things in the Caribbean or happenings in the Caribbean. And then guess what? After the fact, you could come and say, oh, look, guess what? This is how you should have dealt with it. And you should have learned from your experiences in the early 80s. And nobody holds you accountable for that. Nobody says anything. But on top of that, you could come as a sociologist and guess what? You can say, oh, I'm really concerned about the impact of a brewing war in the Caribbean. How that would impact Grenadians. And everybody says, whoa, you guys better listen to the sociologist. She knows what she's talking about. She can tell you so much of the sociological impact, okay, because of a brewing war in the Caribbean. But she can't tell you about the sociological impact if the economy fails, if the economy is put under pressure, if there's visa restrictions, if you don't get to export your fish, okay? She can tell you about the effects of the brewing war, but she can't tell you about the effects of mismanagement of a geopolitical situation and the implications for the citizens of the nation. Wow. Wow. So you've got to understand, it's quite clear, it's quite obvious that these people have a political agenda, okay? And that these people are being disingenuous, intellectually disingenuous. But again, they always come and tell you all of this after the fact, after consequences have descended on the government of Grenada and the people of Grenada. Again, if you know what you're doing in your discipline, whether you be a farmer, agricultural worker, a road worker, whatever, you have a certain level of experience and ability to predict, okay, certain situations based on your discipline and based on your experience in your discipline. So like many of us could have predicted what was happening in closure and what would have happened from day one because we have judgment and experience. We might have done or seen this before. So that in itself could be considered a mark of brilliance. We didn't wait till closure collapsed and half of the mountain collapsed to say, oh, guess what? This is what you need to do to avert that collapse. Okay? We said it before. So I believe in some respects, you can trust with certainty what Hanovi Global News Network says. Like so many other things we've said. And it turned out exactly how we said it. We spoke about the US-Venezuela spat. We spoke about the radio issue. And everything we said turned out exactly as we said it would. Now, I would say that's a mark of brilliance. So a lot of times in situations, you have to analyze. You have to estimate. And then you have to calculate. And then you can decide which option is the best one to take. So you see that talking about in Grenada now, oh, there's a problem with math. Oh, there's so much problem with math. The kids are not good at math. Well, I find that hard to believe and understand. Because most of my peers that I grew up with were some math warlords. So I can't understand how in this year time, with so much resources available to kids on the internet all over the place, that you have a situation where the kids in Grenada have a problem with math. But then no one really had to tell me that. It was understood, especially by how people were bamboozled in the last election. And especially the emotional response that people gave when confronted with the situation of the U.S. spat with Venezuela. It was not based on reason and logic and critical thinking. And that is what math inculcates in you. Reason, logic, and critical thinking. And a lot of that skill that you do, you don't do math for doing math's sake. It creates a certain mentality in your mind. So when you look at a situation, you're going to apply the same logic, reasoning, critical thinking that you learned in math. So if you had good teachers, guess what? You're going to analyze things quite critically. But obviously, that wasn't the case. So they had a radar discussion. Everybody got all emotional. So-and-so Trump, so-and-so Trump. Saying some of the most vile things against Trump. You understand? And you had a U.S.-Venezuela spat, and from the get-go, from day one, they played their hand. Was that logical? Was that reasonable? Can you tell me that these people are young and bright? So you fell for young and bright. And when it came time to prove that they're young and bright, guess what? They miserably failed, especially at the bright part. But then, you guys like people, oh, he cute, we? Oh, look at him, he nice, eh? Nice, eh? And he cute, we. Okay? You can't take that to navigate the terrain, the dangerous terrain of geopolitical issues in the world. You can't go and gamble with the lives of Grenadians and make decisions, erroneous decisions, in this geopolitical game. Because some of these mistakes can prove fatal. Ask your comrades and them. The socialist, Marxist, petty bourgeois. They must have, I don't know, some of them might be suffering from some sort of memory loss. You know what I'm saying? Because only 40-something years ago. I mean, and these guys are still relatively healthy and strong. It's kind of strange that they couldn't remember when their illogical thinking, unreasonable thinking, and lack of critical thinking ended them up in hot water. But all of them come to you now and pretending they're bright. They're big warlords. So, you have to be careful who you look up to as role models. And remember this, by their fruits you shall recognize them. Scriptures tells you, by their fruits you shall recognize them. They say they're young and they're bright. What are they producing? Going around the world globe-trotting to sell passports is no mark of brilliance. I could send a little 2-year-old kid from Grenada, a suitcase in hand, to go and sell passports. And they'll do a great job. But I guess, I don't know, probably our generation benefited from some of the best teachers on the planet. I mean, it would have been a horrible tragedy if you had men like St. Pete teaching you in National College, well, IFE as we used to call it, and National College. Okay? If you had men like St. Pete, and you had men like Mr. Sam, and you had men like Ras Sylvester, okay? Mr. Ras Sylvester. When you had these men, and you had men like, God rest his soul, Mr. Sembana teach you mechanics of material. When you had men like that teaching you math, and for you to go and make them shame, something had to be wrong with you. So I don't know who is teaching these kids math now these days that you have a math problem in Grenada. With all these resources available, okay? We had to walk with pencil and pen and paper. Y'all have all sort of assistance now these days. All sort of assistance. They have videos showing you how to solve the problem. But you have a math problem in Grenada. Again, as I said, I'm not surprised. Look at the level of reasoning, logic, and critical thinking. It's not a surprise that people are going to fall for you telling them that, well, we could use the utility trucks, bucket trucks, at the end of the day and go and pick fruits. Show the island, and that's golden apple on your plate. And people fall for that. As if to say that when you move around the island with these bucket trucks, utility bucket trucks, that all the fruits will come from the mountains and come on the side of the road and stand up there and wait for you to pick them. But people fell for that. And then, I guess unconsciously, the gentleman probably knew it's a pie in the sky idea. So he says to the audience, is that a pie in the sky idea? I hear them, no, no. And he says, oh, that's golden apple and mango on your plate. No, it's not even freaking comedic. It's heartbreaking. And then you have grown people. I ain't worried about the kids. Okay, you can say, all right, youthful indiscretion, they know what's going on. We had grown people. Hear them, oh, he nicer, he cuter, and falling for this crap. Okay? Falling for this crap that people are spewing to you. Telling you how you're going to have 500 Grenada-style house built. Less than no time. Every year. And you fall for that. I mean, unless they were planning to build some toy house. Unless they was trying to just clip them house together. Well, they bought these, let's be clear, modular homes. They're not prefab, they're modular homes. So they brought these modular homes. And you would think that would be easier construction. So by now we should have about 1,500 houses built. But I hear they have, 17 for display. You gotta be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. And you guys fell for that? This is what you guys fell for? Well, let's say it was young people that was following them. So I guess, I don't know, who taught the young people math? For the last 30 years or something. Who taught them math? Obviously, it wasn't the guys that I had in HHSS. Like Mr. Straker and them. Oh, because my generation, even those guys who went to PVC, they had what? They had Brother Leonard and them fellas and them. And they had, I forget the one that was really, really good at math and stuff like that. But these guys were sharp. A matter of fact, these guys in GBSS was doing AdMath in Form 4. They weren't even waiting to reach in Form 5. And they were taking their GCs or whatever in Form 4. And doing exceptionally well. These are the young men that I grew up with. Now you tell me you have a math problem in Grenada? Interesting. I thought that as the years progress, that you will be better educationally. Again, as I have said, with all the resources you have now these days. Some people couldn't even come with a pen and pencil. They have enough pen and pencil. Some people used to write with a little pencil, short so. But they were great at math. Now you have a whole pack of pen, pencil, all kind of thing. And still all you can do math. Well, what again all you need? All your laptop, all your computer, iPad, this, that, the other. And still, Grenada has a math problem? Talking about role models. It's like a pet peeve of mine. This whole October 19 Heroes Day stuff. That stuff is making me so upset. Because I understand what they're doing. I'm not sure, but I'm wondering if Dr. This and Dr. That wasn't probably instrumental in this Heroes Day. I'm wondering. Because I understand what you guys, are trying to do this Heroes Day. You think you're slick. But I'm going to expose it to Grenadians. So what they're doing is that they're trying to change and bury what actually happened on October 19, 1983. So I'll tell you how they're going to achieve this. So they create this artificial Heroes Day. And then go start putting heroes showing the history of Grenada. So when the youths now perceive about Heroes Day, they will see it as a day to recognize heroes throughout the history of Grenada. So after about 10 or 20 years, none of these youths going to actually make the association of October 19 with those tragic, evil events. So it pretty much would be buried. That is how cunning these people and them playing they are for Grenadians. And all you sit there and all you swallow this up. You guys must be out of your mind. Grown people in a society. As if you can't see through what they're trying to do with this October 19th Heroes Day. So by doing that and calling it Heroes Day, they could have ultimately erased the events of October 19th as time progresses. You see how wickedly nefarious these people are? Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to counteract. You want heroes on October 19th? Okay, I'll tell you who's my heroes. Well, one of my heroes on October 19th was Lyden Randony. Okay, you want to talk about heroes? I'll give you heroes. Because you know what that man did? When he realized the immensity of the divide within that PRG government and how these people are at each other's throat. You know what man said? He basically said, kiss my ass. Here is your Makarov. I don't want it. And I don't want no part of this nonsense. So he went into them and gave up his Makarov. Now that is a hero. That is a smart man. A man who was able to understand what was going to take place. Who was able to predict. That was a mark of brilliance. The ability to predict something, see where it's heading, and says, look, I don't want no part of that. Here's your Makarov. Do whatever you want. I'm done. I'll tell you another hero of mine. You want heroes? October 19? I'll give you heroes. Another hero. A matter of fact, another two heroes. A matter of fact, both of them are majors. And of course, one of them, Paul G, is already in the public domain, so I can talk about him because there's a whole documentary about him and his actions he took on that fateful day. That gentleman was a hero. That gentleman was a hero. And you all don't have no respect and love for these gentlemen. But you see who's all your heroes? All these fake imposters is all your heroes. That gentleman, Paul G, is a hero. Because in some respects, he used his military experience for the good of the citizens of Grenada on that fateful day. There's another major, okay? He's not so much in the public domain, so I'm not going to get into the name. But that gentleman, tall, slim, major, guess what he did? When this confusion started brewing, he said, look, I don't want no part of that. He left them badging and them. And as I said, he went up to St. Mark's in his hometown and went and hung out with the priest. Because again, that was a mark of brilliance. That gentleman understood where things was headed. But hot-tempered Bajans thought they know best. You want to talk about heroes again of October 19? Heroes Day? I'll tell you about a hero. His name again I can call. It's in the public domain. He was, on trial and all that stuff. Mr. Rayburn Nelson. I believe he was a captain, if I remember good, but probably could have been a lieutenant, but I more believe he was a captain. But anyway, that is a gentleman. Okay, when he got the instruction to mobilize his peeps to go on a vote, he said, first he rejected the instruction. Okay? He says, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to get involved in that. Eventually, because of the whole command structure, he was intimidated in some respects and was forced. So, don't worry. Y'all want heroes of October 19? I'm going to give you all heroes. More heroes coming. So the bottom line is this. To you Grenadian youths, be careful who you choose as your heroes.